Join us today as we get to talk directly to an author. Molly Macabre is with us today, the author of Dark Bloom. Fantastic, incredible novel in the zombie apocalyptic subgenre. And this is going to be cool. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Jim, the father, here with you today, not with my son. Zach is actually off on vacation. He's partying hardy in New York City, of all places. So, might be just a little jealous, except he's really cold. I've seen the pictures. So, oh well. Instead, friend of the show, content creator, most excellent Minnesotan, Derek is with us today. How you doing, Derek?
Good, Jim. Thanks for having me back here. It hasn't been that long since we've talked, but it'd be exciting to do this again.
Absolutely. People have probably seen you on the channel already, but just in case someone is here for the very first time, remind our viewers, who you are, what you do, content you make and such.
Sure. Yep. Again, my name's Derek, and I'm one half of a podcast I do with my best friend Justin. We call ourselves D&J's Epic Quest. We are trudging our way through Malazan, one chapter at a time, roughly a week. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. We are partway into the fourth book, House of Chains, and we've gone on some side quests, done some other books and things like that as well. You can find us YouTube, Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you find a podcast. D&J's Epic Quest.
Most of their content is that journey through Malazan, but they have a few other things they're reading too, checking out and enjoying. And one of those kinds of things that, Derek has made a point to read and check out is the book we're going to have the author on today, Dark Bloom. We had a chance to read that and talk about it together, and now it's so exciting to actually have an author with us. So let me bring in Molly Macabre. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastical, wonderful, and better than characters who are in your book.
Yes, that is true.
Oh, what should people who haven't heard of you before, haven't read that awesome book that's sitting there behind you in the background yet, what should they know about you, Molly?
So, this is my debut novel. I'm a self-published author, and it came out in August. Other than that, I'm working on a few other things. Probably, I'm hoping to publish at least one thing this year. Personally, I am a mom, a wife. I work as a pharmacy technician. It's a lot of fun.
So
Um,
you professionally deal drugs. Is that
I
what I
do.
just
I
heard?
sell drugs legally. I do. I do.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah, I work in retail pharmacy. It's absolutely bananas. I am the chaos coordinator there, so that's great. I am a content creator of myself now. So I've been on pretty much every social you can imagine. Just, I mean, advertising my book, hanging out, meeting amazing people like you guys. But I just started my own YouTube channel. I'm really excited for that. I don't know where it's going to go, but honestly, I'm just really excited to have a platform to shout about the books I read and maybe give some insights. One of my videos I plan on doing next is going to be a lot of people ask me about my audiobook. So I plan on going over the process, the steps that went into that. So videos like that, maybe it'll help somebody, maybe it won't, but you know what? It'll be on my channel and I'll be super proud of it.
Absolutely. There you go. When you
Nice.
make content, it should be something, you just enjoy doing. And maybe other people will enjoy it too, but
Yeah,
definitely you should enjoy it.
exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Derek and I have both talked about your book in that we're shocked at how good it is when it's your debut novel.
Oh, thank
That's just
you.
that's just amazing, So my first question would be, how did you get so good at writing when you just started?
I've been writing for a long time, I would say. I started out and I still remember the moment that I won a journal in like 5th grade. I don't even remember what the contest was, but I started journaling and I journaled. I mean, I had probably 20 to 30 journals by the time I was graduating high school. And mostly it was just really, really horrible, like, "I'm in English class. I hate this teacher. I'm really tired," like, just really dumb stuff. But within that, I would write a lot of poetry, very angsty stuff, some short stories, and I've just always had I like poetry a lot. I like being able to say really dramatic things in a short amount of words. I took a lot of time off from writing, getting married, having kids,
Life.
buying a house. Yeah, for sure. So I took a lot of time off from reading too. I used to work a desk job where I could read books in between calls, and I devoured books, and then I ended up working in retail pharmacy, and I mean, I'm on my feet. I don't even like have 2 seconds to really look at my phone half the time, so I'm just on the
Mhm.
go. So I didn't read for the longest time until I discovered audiobooks are it that was a learning curve. It was strange to me at first, like, "This is a weird concept, I don't know, let's try it out," but I wanted to read, and that was how I could get it done.
Mhm.
So, now I just love them, and, I was listening to Stephen King's It last year, or no, I guess
Ooh.
my book I have been writing my book for 2 years, so it would've been 2 years ago, and I was like, "Wow, he's telling a story, maybe I could tell a story too." Not on King's level, but of course, but, maybe I could try it out, and, I just came home one day and I was like, "I think I could just tell a story," and my husband was like, "Yeah, go for it." So, thus beg I remember I wrote the first paragraph to Dark Bloom sitting in my car on Google Docs, the app. I was on my lunch break, and that's how it all started.
Wow. Wow. That's a heck of a story there. Now, Derek and I are going to bounce back and forth on questions. So I'm going to
Sure.
toss it to Derek. Go for it, sir. What do you want to ask?
Well, I think my first question here leads pretty well off yours, Jim, and into what you were already saying, Molly. But I was curious what your writing process is like. Does inspiration just hit you? Do you have to make time to write? I mean, you said you're just in your car writing that first paragraph. I mean, now do you have to be like at your desk at home, or if you were at the
With a
park with your
sharpened number
kids
two
and you
pencil.
you had an idea in your head, are you going to open up a Google Doc like you did in your car and just start jotting things down?
Yeah, so funnily enough, that's the only time I've ever wrote on my phone. I can't stand it. It drives me bananas. I think I just had this moment where I was like, "I need to get this down." And, so my writing process would often look like I would work 10 to 12 hours a day. I would think about scenes in my head all day long, play them out, maybe not necessarily write the exact wording, but just think about them playing out like a movie. And I would come home and I would sit down and I wrote Dark Bloom chronologically. I didn't even have an ending for it. So I would just sit and I would write probably way past my bedtime because of course when I get home it's not just sit down and write. It's get the kids ready, for bed, have dinner, all the things. A lot of times like during the summer, a lot of times I was writing with them asleep in my lap because they didn't have a bedtime. So they would just come and sit with me and I'd have, one on one side, one on the other and I would just be typing my household because, we have a busy family, my household can be pretty loud. So when I first started writing, I put music on and I was like, I'd have music on, I'd be writing and I was like, wow, I can still hear my household. So I would turn it up. And now I just have like music blasting in my ears and I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know how I'm going to write like this. Well, again, with conditioning, we just make it work, and it got to the point where sometimes I would look up at my Spotify and be like, "Oh, wow, I didn't even realize this song was on," because I started tuning it out, just getting into what I was writing.
White noise.
Yeah, so I didn't have any notes other than notes on the disease that was used, in this book. I didn't have any notes, I just sat down and was like, "Alright, well, now we're here. I think we wanna go the here. How are they gonna get there? What's gonna happen in between?" And, yeah, my writing process now has definitely I wanna say matured. I do have, some notes, some outlines, and I actually I'm pretty much done with my sequel first draft, but that was actually written out of order completely. So, whatever I was feeling that day, "Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
I wanna include this scene," so I'd write it out, and that was really really fun to piece together. When it was time, I was dreading it, I probably put it off for way too long. Um, But yeah, it's an evolving process.
Awesome. Awesome. I've heard, from multiple different authors their process, and nobody does it the same. So
Yeah.
yours is your unique creative process and it works for you. That's
Yep.
awesome. My next question would be, I love the subgenre you chose to write in. I read a ton of stuff in here. It was kind of new for Derek to read something in this genre,
Yep.
but I read a lot in this. And I know there's a lot of levels. There are some really good stuff, there's some really bad stuff. I've
Mhm.
kind of enjoyed all of it. It doesn't matter, but this is on the higher end. I will tell you that, just my broad comparison. But what led you to tell a story in this particular post-apocalyptic type of setting? I mean, you could have picked rainbows and unicorns. I mean, you could go anywhere. You went here. I'm curious how you got here.
So I had my characters Nick and Kate from the jump. I knew these were the two people I was going to write about. And I knew I wanted them to come from a very dark setting. And I'm just a really big fan of apocalypse stories, post-apocalypse zombie stories.
Yay.
I love that genre. So I knew Nick and Kate really, really, really well before I started writing, and I knew what they needed to become what they were, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I was like, well, and I guess if this is going to sound kind of bad, but I wanted it to be easy in the fact that, like, there's no question that this is a chaotic environment. And what better way to do that than to completely take away the world that everyone knows?
Perfect. Beautiful. And just to follow up, so you love this genre, but I did see you just recently read World War Z. Am I right there?
Yes, yes, yes.
Why did you wait so long? I mean, is that not amazing as a story?
I will tell you why I waited so long. So I knew things about World War Z, of course. Who hasn't, especially being in the book world, who doesn't know at least something about it? And
Sure.
I knew it was a very world building, I guess is the term. It's not a character driven story. It is very broad and
Mhm.
detailed, and
Mhm.
I'm not even gonna lie, I was intimidated by it, to be honest.
Ah,
We're not even over with the first month, and I'm learning a lot about myself as far as reading, because right now I'm reading Red Rising. Well, I'm listening
and
to it.
and
Well, this was another one. I see it all the time. I was intimidated by it. I get intimidated by sci-fi and fantasy, especially with audiobooks, because you don't have your own pacing.
yeah,
You don't get to sit and, hold on to words and go over scenarios. So I get intimidated that I'm going to get lost. I have 4 hours left, and this book is incredible.
it is.
I almost cried on the way home, and a book has not done that to me
Yeah.
really ever. And so, and from what I hear, it is the worst book in the series. Not that worst is not a good, but yeah, I'm really loving it.
It
So I'm
is
learning a
just
lot.
yeah, yeah. It's the shallowest book of the series.
There you go.
Really,
That's okay.
really goes places after this. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, and I'm also not a series person, but and as I'm nearing the end, I'm like, yeah, I think I have a couple things I have to, put before it, but I think I'm just gonna jump into the second book in a month or two. So
There
I'm
you go.
excited.
Nice. I'll agree with you. Not all books work on audio. Some
Mhm.
you need to be able to linger some more on some things. But my son would say, that's just you decide to go at 1 or 1.75.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I listen on 1.2, so
See, some control.
it's yeah, I get a little bit faster through it, but I'm still slowing it down. I mean, I listened to the Stand by Stephen King on audio.
My
It took me
favorite
3
Stephen King book.
months.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it's not my favorite. It's probably my second favorite, but that's a lot. There were times when he would go back to a character that, he talked about 5 hours ago, and I'm
You're
like,
like, who is
"Wait,
this?
yeah, who is this?" And, it all comes together, but
Yeah,
it does take a lot of dedication and a lot of focus to listen to an audiobook.
totally. Derek, jump in. What you got?
I'll just add, I know Justin is reading Red Rising right now as well. It's
Okay.
not I haven't jumped on it. I read Empire of Silence, and I feel like there's some comparisons between the two. I don't know. So yeah, I haven't jumped on that, and I've just been reading other stuff as well. So my next question here, I guess this will shift gears a little bit. But Molly, if Dark Bloom were to be made into like a movie or a TV show, did you have actors or actresses that you imagined,
Who's
Nick
Kate?
and
Who's
Kate?
Nick?
Oh
So
my
like
gosh.
when I was reading this, I had in my head Joe Manganiello. I don't know how to say his last name, but the guy who was the werewolf in True Blood. I don't know what else he is in.
Okay. Okay.
And then I thought Evangeline Lilly as Kate, the girl from Lost. If you ever
Oh,
watched
all right.
Lost.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Okay. I could see that. I'm not big on like actors' names and what this, that, and the other, I guess. Man, that's a great
Pull a
question though.
performance from a movie or TV show, and we'll figure out who it was. You know,
Well, man, I don't know. Nick is just kind of in his own league because I picture someone who's obviously militaristic, but not over the top. I mean, maybe like if Tom Hardy weren't so crazy. So maybe Tom Hardy, Kate, man, who's even popular right now? I don't watch a lot of TV.
oh man, sorry, but the guy. Okay, Nick could totally be played by the guy from Twisters, the recent one.
I did
Who's
see
that?
that.
That guy. That's he's got the Nick look.
Okay, yes, I can see that, totally. See, I
I
have no
haven't
idea
seen
what
it.
his name is. Yeah, we watched it recently, like, within the past month or 2. There was Twister's not my thing, but my husband really wanted to see it. Kate, man, who would play Kate?
Mm.
Probably just a small dark-haired, I don't know. I don't know.
I'll
Fair.
have to come up with different people and just start popping them up on the screen here,
I
and
know, and,
well,
I've
they can
been
decide
meaning
for
that's
themselves.
I see people do that often as, like, a marketing thing, like, this is who would play, and I've been meaning to sit down for the longest time, be like, "Who would play them in a movie or a TV show?" And I just haven't gotten to it. But that is a great question. I think it would give a good, I guess, aesthetic for the book.
When I read a story, I am totally there for the narrative, the story itself. There's lots of details that I won't pay much attention to. I just get lost in the story. And one of them is I don't think about what the characters look like. I have to be honest. When I'm reading,
Right.
I'm just caught up in what's happening.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
if they made a movie adaptation, I'd be like, "Oh, I hate who they cast." And then by the end of the movie, I'd be like, "Oh, that's what they look like." Okay, if they do the movie right. Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
All right, my next question is that these creatures you created, I mean, you never use the word zombie. If I'm correct, you never said zombie in the book. I'd have to go back and search with a find.
I
Did
think
you?
I think it's used once in dialogue.
Okay. Okay, but it's not constantly, oh, these zombie creatures, all these zombie creatures. No. They were really unique. These particular ones you came up with, and that creepy giggle. I mean, that was genius. So I'm curious how you came up with these particular type of creatures. Was this some nightmare? I mean, what?
No, so, I had my setting. I was like, I wanna do zombie apocalypse. But even if I didn't go too deep into why within the book, I needed to know what was going on, why this was happening, and, so I looked up diseases or viruses that were with symptoms reminiscent to, zombie-like behavior. So I came across a prion protein disease called the Kuru disease, and it's really, really, really incredibly rare, mostly like an older disease that was in Africa. But what would happen is, well, it's another example of the prion protein disease is the mad cow disease.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, bits of brain and spine matter being consumed by creatures of the same type.
Yep.
So the first type of symptom is awkward motor skills, sometimes loss of motor function. And then once it passes the blood brain barrier, you get, and when I was reading this, it said random psychological outbursts such as laughing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, can you imagine how creepy that would be? Like, you're just walking around in this abandoned town and something is just cackling. That's terrifying." So I went with that, but also a video game that I really like, which, has zombie-like creatures in it. There are particular, they call them puppets, they don't call them zombies, but there's a particular puppet that is in high loot areas, and he has an explosive strapped to his chest, and you know that you're getting near him because you'll hear him start to laugh. and then you'll hear the
Mm,
beeping and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, he's gonna
crap.
explode. Yeah, and he's laughing and he's like saying things like, I had a family, and it's like it's so creepy, especially if it's at night or you're just like in a
Mhm.
dark foggy area in this game. So just those two things together, I was like, yes, this is what I'm gonna do, because it'll be terrifying.
That's marvelous, and that is terrifying. And the fact that you base it on something that is like could be real life, sorta. Oh yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, I take a ton of liberties with it, especially when we get to book 2, but that's why they call it fiction, so
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Derek?
I guess this isn't my next question, but you actually did quite a bit of research into things then. And I'm curious what that game is. I don't know. It's not
Scum.
even here.
It's called Scum. Yeah,
Not heard of it.
it's not super well known. I've been in and out of it for about 3 years, and it's still in beta, but it's like point 0.9, so it's really close to, I guess, being released, but it's really fun. It's an open world survival. There's different servers you can join, different types of servers, because you can just be, it's like PvE or, player versus player, or there's a ton you can do. I love it so much.
Hmm.
So if you've
Interesting.
never played Scum, you've never heard of it, but you're watching this 6 months from now and you love it, you heard about it first here. There you go.
Exactly.
My question, when I was reading, you've got the scene in the book where Nick and Kate, they're in like this mansion and they find this like record player or CD player, and they find this collection of music and they just throw something on. And I'm curious if you had an idea of what that song was that they were playing. I know when I read it, I felt like I had a song in mind, and it was a band that is from Virginia as well. I don't know if that gives you any hints, but I was thinking that they must have been listening to Walk With Me in Hell by Lamb of God.
Oh, are you talking about when they're drinking in the
Yeah.
downstairs? Okay.
Yep.
So no, they're actually listening to OG Loco by Mice and Men. And when I originally wrote that scene, I had lyrics put into that scene, but of course I was like, I can't do that without their permission. So I reached out to them on several different, like, I think Instagram. I emailed their manager, and from what I was reading, you have to pay to use lyrics in something like that. I don't know how much it would be. I thought it was worth a shot to yeah, I thought it would be worth it just to find out. What would you charge me? But nobody ever responded to me, so I had to take it out. But yeah, they're OG Loco by Of Mice and Men is it's a really, I mean, in my opinion, it's a pretty heavy song, but it's actually a really cool love song, and I love it. I listened to it literally over and over again while I was writing that scene.
I like Of Mice and Men, but I don't know if I know that song, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's one of their older, because they've been coming out with new stuff for a while now. It's not as old as Austin Carlisle, the original singer, but it still has Shaylee Borgett, which is one of thetheir original singers, and it's a really great song, and the lyrics are beautiful.
Yeah, so you never heard back from them, but if you'd used it anyways, trust me, you'd hear from them then.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to play with that. There were a lot of things in there that I had to be super careful about, because when they're in the hospital and they're walking through the children's ward, I had named some Disney characters, and I was like, "Oh," and because I know there's like a fine line, you can use song titles and book titles, but with Disney character names, and I started reading stuff online, and they were like, "Oh, Disney will take care of that and sue," and I was like, "You know
Yeah.
what? It's not worth it." So
I mean,
I just
Mickey
described.
Mouse, Winnie the Pooh, fair game now, but after that, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just rather be like, can you imagine a self-published author has made like a total of $10 and they're getting sued by Disney? Like, it's just not that I would be on Disney's radar, but I just was like, if there's an inkling of a chance, I don't want to take it.
You'd have that. You get that letter, cease and desist. We're gonna
Yeah,
sue you. You'd have one moment of, I've arrived, and the next moment is, crap.
exactly. So yeah, not worth it. Not worth it.
All right, for my next question, you bring some pretty heavy themes and events into this novel, and we're not going all spoilery here and stuff, but I'm curious about what the inspiration was to go that deep, to bring such elements, such trauma into the story. Anything you can
Um,
share without ruining your story?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a really long backstory to how Nick and Kate kind of came into my life, and just for the sake of time and for not making this super bleak, I'll just give an overview. I did write out a really long piece, and it's on my website just for anybody that's interested.
Okay. Okay. We'll link
So
that in the show
essentially, yeah.
notes.
So Nick and Kate were they were characters in my head long before I ever thought about writing them into a book. I basically had created them at a time in my life when I didn't have a physical escape and I needed a mental escape. And so taking Nick and Kate, I mean Nick and Kate have lived so many lives in my head, not just zombie apocalypses. They've just gone through so many scenarios. And that kind of touches on your earlier question too, is that was the importance of having these characters be in a dark place and finding healing and trust and hope, because I was in a dark place and I wanted to believe these things were out there, were
Mhm.
real. So yeah, I had a really bad relationship that I was in and out of for 6 years, and that was just really tough. So Nick and Kate were my way of dissociating. I would just play stories in my head. So when it came time to write a book and I was like, I don't even know what I would write about. And it was like Nick and Kate were like, hello, we're here.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. That's cool to hear that you had the characters before you even knew what the story would be.
Yeah.
That's kind of unique, I think, probably. And I love it. Derek?
I'll kind of combine two of my questions here. I'm curious what your favorite zombie movie is. I haven't watched a ton, but one of my favorites, probably my favorite one, is Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. And some of the first few chapters remind me of that movie in some ways. Like, especially you get the scene with the little girl, and I won't go into spoilers or anything, but it makes me think of
Yeah.
the beginning of that movie, where
Okay.
she goes into, that little girl goes into, I think it was a neighbor. It wasn't, those parents' kids, and attacks her. But yeah, just curious what your favorite zombie movie is.
My favorite zombie movie is 28 Days Later.
Oh, brilliant movie. Brilliant movie.
I actually, what's funny is it's been around for so long and I assumed I had seen it. And I think I was getting it mixed up with another movie, but
Oh, wow.
I watched, so they have the new movie coming out. I'm
28
obsessed with the
years later.
trailer. Yes.
Good. Yes.
And I was like, yeah, I think I've seen 28 Days Later. And my husband was like, I don't think we've seen it. And I was like, oh, are you sure? So anyway, long story short, we watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, nobody's gonna believe I've never seen this movie before. Like it shares a lot of themes with my book, in my opinion. And I was like, nobody's gonna believe, but I'd never seen it. I absolutely loved it. I watched the other 28 weeks later as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
I thought it was still very fantastic, but not as powerful
Yeah.
as the original. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite. I like The Walking Dead a lot too. I stuck
Yeah.
it through for all, what is it, 11,
11
12 seasons,
seasons.
11
Yes.
seasons. Yes. I that man, that show has had me bawling my
Yeah.
eyes out.
Deep.
So powerful. Yes. Love that show very much.
I have to admit, I've watched again also a ton of zombie apocalypse movies and shows, and I love many of them, but my favorite is Shaun of the Dead. It's just so funny. I'm
It-
sorry. And it's only really funny if you get zombie apocalypse.
right.
Oh,
That's
so
a good
good.
one.
Derek, have you seen Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So good. So good. Molly, what was the hardest part of actually creating this beautiful work of art that you want the world to see and getting it to the world?
I would say just staying positive. There have been times where I've shared something about it and it's gotten, a ton of attention, a ton of engagement. And then there's times where I'll share something about it and crickets, nothing. And
Dang
I,
algorithms.
yes. And it also depends on what app, what social media app you're using. TikTok is one that I was using a lot, and I would sit for like 2 hours and create this beautiful, I went out and actually took a bunch of pictures. Me and my mom drove around and took pictures of all the abandoned things in the area. Yeah, and I took
Cool.
videos of them so that I could take them and edit them and like slow them down and add effects and just really cool stuff. Put music over top of it, added in some creepy, in a world, type stuff.
I love
And,
it.
I would post it to TikTok and it would get like 200 views, 5 likes. Then I would make a stupid meme that I created in 5 seconds and it's blowing up and I'm like, this is so frustrating. But honestly, it just gets to the point where the less you care, the better stuff does, or at least the better you feel. But
Wow.
honestly, the biggest thing is just don't stop posting, because even if one person sees it, that's one person that reads it, and that person might go tell another person or 5 more people, or maybe they don't, but it's just still one more reader that you have. So it can be so discouraging for self-published authors. They're posting their stuff all the time. And then another thing I try to do is I just try to be myself. I don't always just try to post about my book all the time. I'll be like, yeah, this funny thing happened to me today, or I really like this song, or just stuff that I enjoy or think is funny. And
Hmm.
sometimes that draws people in other ways. They're like, oh yeah, this is a funny story. Who is this whimsical, hilarious person? And they're like, oh, she's an author. So yeah, it can be really frustrating just screaming and screaming and screaming about a book that you worked really hard on and think is wonderful. But I think the thing I just try to remind myself is just don't stop screaming about it.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. Well, the screaming works. I mean, I found it because of social media. I saw it on X, keep saying X, but yeah, that's where I first heard about it, and again and again, and then hey, there it is. Now we're talking about your wonderful
Exactly.
book.
Exactly.
Yeah, Derek, got another one for us?
I do. Do you know, did Matt put any questions into this document? Because I don't remember writing this question, and it's kind of in the middle of mine. So if this was my
Oh, maybe
question,
he did.
I'm
Maybe he
kind of
squeezed
proud
it
of it.
in there. And when we're saying Matt, we did an episode a week ago. This for viewers out there, if you haven't watched that episode, go back and watch it. It's great.
Yes, it
But
was really awesome.
read the book first. And definitely read the book. Okay. Just read the book. Trust us. Okay. But yeah, Matt at Go Read Books was gonna be here today too, and something came up at last minute. He couldn't make it. And he says, hi, Molly. Hi. But maybe this is his question or something. I don't know. But Derek, go
Maybe
ahead. What you got?
I don't remember writing this one, but I think it's a good question. So, we kind of talked about these undead, these zombie-like creatures, and they laugh. Kate's got this horrific, traumatic past. And again, if I wrote this at the time, I was wondering if she feels like they're maybe laughing at her because of how, like, we see how she denied what happened to her to her own friends. Maybe there's more to come on that. But yeah, I don't remember honestly if I wrote that question or if that's,
That's dark, deep,
yeah.
psychological, and ugh.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I have been asked that before. If and somebody brought to my attention the fact that, like, Connor kind of has this smirk about him all the time, and they asked if that was sort of to mock her in that sense as well. I really just thought the laughing undead would be really creepy. It didn't really play much on how Kate felt about it other than to be terrified. But I mean, I like the connection. I think it definitely works.
There you have to start to wonder subconsciously what
Right.
might be going on, and you just don't even know as you're creatively. Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Well, it's funny because that happens. I've picked up on a lot of things about this book that I didn't intend to put in there while I was writing, but then I go back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, of course I put that in there. Like, that makes so much sense why I wrote it that way."
Mm-hmm. Another friend of mine who's an author, when he's writing things, sometimes, I mean, like you, he doesn't know where it's going to go at the end. When he's writing, it just kind of writes itself, parts of it.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah,
it feels right. Things come out, and then you go back and look, and oh, look, it was all laid out there. I didn't even know where I was going yet, but it's there. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned Dark Bloom 2.
Mhm.
When can we hope to see that?
So, I'm hoping I don't give myself due dates or
Don't
deadlines
need the pressure.
because they stress me out. And I just have so much going on. But my goal is Halloween of 2025. But I'm hoping that if I could get it by August, that would be really cool because it would be about exactly a year later. I have my first draft done. It needs work because it's shorter than I would like it to be.
Ah,
And I still need to add some connecting points in there. Some, how did we get to this scene from this scene? But I was getting really frustrated with myself trying to go back to those exact places when I had like, oh, I've got 1 hour to write. And then I'm sitting there pulling around through my manuscript, trying to find the one place I needed to work on. So I've just decided we're going to call it a first draft and just start the editing process. That way I can kind of get back in the zone of everything. And then it'll be, I've got to send it to my editor. I decided to send it to my editor twice. One thing I didn't like about what I did with Dark Bloom was I sent it to him. He sent me back an edited manuscript, and then I made all these edits very, very quickly because I wanted the book to be out.
Okay.
And then I hit publish on KDP, and I had to go back and sorry.
That was great.
Catch.
Smooth.
I had to go back and catch once it was like in print, and I had to catch a bunch of things, and I rushed it. I really did. So what I want to do is I want to send it to my editor, have him tell me all the things I need to fix, and then I want to fix them, and then I want to send it to him again so he can go over what I fixed instead of just me hoping on hope that it's great. You know, I had to rewrite an entire chapter for Dark Bloom, and because he highlighted the whole thing and was like, nah, this doesn't work. And
nah.
Yeah, there was no other comments. The whole thing was just highlighted, and he was like, this doesn't really make sense. I mean, he was very nice about it, of course, but he was like, this is just really unbelievable. I think you should take a second look at this. And he was absolutely right. The whole chapter was very forced to get from the chapters on either side.
Sure.
So I rewrote it, and then, you know, I mean, this sounds bad, but I didn't want to spend the time or the money on sending him the whole thing again. So I was just like, I hope it's good. So that's just very truthful. So I'm gonna take my time and send it to him twice, and I want his, unless I'm fixing very tiny, you know, adding a comma or really tiny things, I want his eyes to be the last editing eyes on it.
It sounds like you've actually got a pretty good editor, which is
yes,
which is cool. And if you need pretty good ARC readers,
okay,
just saying, you know, I'm sure Derek. Where's your hand, Derek? Get your hand up there.
It's here.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how ARCs work, and I've never read an ARC or done an ARC for my book, but I think that it's something that I'm going to be interested in, primarily because Dark Bloom was really written from my soul, and it was like I didn't really like, this sounds bad, I didn't really want anybody's feedback on like, well, I don't think they should have done this because, well, okay, well, this is what this is what happens. But with Dark Bloom's sequel, it's more of just a continuation of the story. It's more of my creativity from an author stance rather than my creativity from my past life, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely interested on where readers are hoping it will go, where they'd like to see it go, and if where I took it meets their standards.
And keep in mind, there's a difference between an ARC reader and like a beta reader.
Right.
An ARC reader won't give you feedback. ARC reader is going to help promote your book.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
You've got that finished copy, but it's not ready. It's not October 1st yet, or whatever it is. You know, if you've got it ready in September or even August or whatever, you know, advance of what you really want to release it, we will help the world know it's coming. You know, that's what an ARC does.
Yeah, I do have some beta readers that I keep thinking, should I send them some stuff now? And I keep telling myself, no, hold off. I want to send it to my editor once before I send it to my beta readers, but I'm really excited. It's mostly they are friends and family who helped read through my my work, Dark Bloom, the first book. So I'm really excited to get some things out there to them.
Perfect. Derek, one last question, because we're kind of getting close to wrapping here. But what's a really good one you have, sir?
Sure. Well, first I'll just say that to me, it's very impressive that you've already got your first draft done, and it's been roughly 6 months since your book came out.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me. So congratulations on that.
It's like Brandon Sanderson face, man. Sheesh.
Which is really, I appreciate that.
My last question, I guess, what can you tell us about Dead Bloom 2? Is it going to be called Dead? Sorry, I did that before.
I'm gonna cut and edit that one. Wow, no Dead Bloom here. Okay, so ask the question again.
I did that on Twitter too.
Maybe I will keep all this. That's funny, but go on.
So what can you tell us about Dark Bloom 2? Is there going to be a different title? You don't have to tell us what it is, but or are you just going to have Dark Bloom 2? Any juicy bits you
Dark
can give us to
Blooms.
keep us hungry here?
There will be a different title. It'll be Dark something. I trying to make it like Dark Blight, something that goes along with it. I just haven't let myself think too much about it because we're just not there yet.
Darker
But it'll
shades of
definitely
bloom.
it'll definitely be Dark something. And I don't know if so it'll be a duology. This will be the last of this.
Hey, that's a
Yeah.
tidbit. All right.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm supposed to then name my duology. I don't know. I because you have like trilogies have names, so we'll get there. As far as information about it, so where we left off in Dark Bloom presents us with a lot of opportunities, and I am just like with Dark Bloom have an like a general goal that they're trying to get to, but of course it's really not about that goal. It's about everything that happens in between, and the sequel's going to be much the same. That's going to be there. They won't really get a chance to get too far into it because it just really gets chaotic, and I am really sorry in advance for what I put Nick through.
Okay. All right.
I've got one thing to follow up with that. I really enjoyed the flashbacks in between. Your chapters,
Yeah.
not necessarily throughout the entire book, but through a lot of it, you had kind of present past for a lot of it, and I really enjoyed that. I hope that's something that will continue in the sequel.
So you're emphasizing you enjoyed that writing style, not so much what was happening in the freaking flashbacks. Holy cow.
Well, I hope we get more of that. I'm hoping we get more of that backstory. I mean, and that sounds dark, knowing if you've read the book, but just it was a very interesting way to write, I thought, and yes,
well
I did enjoy it.
Okay. I haven't written any flashbacks in it, and maybe that can be something I can throw in there just to know that it's exactly. I do have a prologue though. Fancy me. The prologue starts us out in between. It starts us out after Kate is put into the world, but before she meets Nick, and it's sort of a reminder of the world that we're in and what Kate went through. So that's how I started off. Yeah, it's funny because some people don't jive with the flashbacks and memories, which is totally cool.
Really?
Yeah, I've had some feedback. Well, mostly just reading, reviews. They're like, it's not for me. But a lot of people seem to enjoy them. I've heard that also sometimes on audio, it can be a little confusing at first because I didn't want to jump in and say this is a flashback. Like I didn't know, but it makes me happy to know that people did enjoy them because if I can be honest, it was sort of my rookie way of being, I don't want to be at this part of the story, but I want you guys to know what happened to them in the past. So I was like, well, how can I do that? And I just decided I'll just throw in chapters about their past. Whereas now with Dark Bloom's sequel, we do go back in the past sometimes, but it's more in the moment. Nick walks into a room. This reminds him of his childhood. And then we get a flash, like a scene of what happened there. And as I've evolved as a writer, I'm able to put that into the scene without making it its own thing. So we're still definitely going to touch on things in the past, and maybe I will add some more just to see if I can come up with anything else or just kind of pour through their past and see if there's anything else that needs to be revealed. But yeah, it's good to hear that people enjoyed that writing style.
It made the characters feel very real and believable to me. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent.
It's somewhat mind-blowing some people didn't care for the flashbacks, but on this channel, Fantasy for the Ages, we are perfectly content with some people being wrong. I mean, that's all right. We respect their opinion to be wrong. Oh, wow. All right. Well, Molly, thank you so much for joining us here today. This was a fantastic book. We got a lot out of it. We totally enjoyed it. A great story. Again, shockingly good for a debut novel. So we're excited for what you have coming down the pipe. And, a duology means then you'll have to come up with something else to write. Something
I'm
new.
already there. I'm
already there. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And, we'll look forward to it. We'll keep watching for your books, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And all of you watching out there now, again, we're serious. Go read this book. If you have already, then you know why we love it, and it's terrific. And even if you're not a fan of zombie apocalypse literature, there's stuff in this book that you will value. There's goodness here to grab onto. It's the zombie apocalypse is the background it's set upon. That's all. That's all. But if you do like it, you're going to enjoy this book that much more. We'll just say that. Derek, any final words before we sign off here?
No, thank you for your time, Molly. It was great to chat with you about your book. I had a lot of fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Derek.
And we're hoping there's new fans of yours because of this episode. So last thing you want to say, Molly, before we sign off?
No, I just appreciate all my readers, all of my friends, all my author friends. I appreciate you guys. Pretty much everything you need to know about me is on my website, which is macablemolly.com. There is that super long piece I wrote about the inspiration of Dark Bloom. It can be kind of bleak, but it does end very well, just to note. But yeah, I just appreciate you guys for having me.
Our pleasure. Okay, thanks everyone. Glad you were here. Don't forget to put your thoughts on what we talked about down in the comments. And if you might like the episode, that's always cool. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.